create single single page application. SPA is single page application using create React app using npm. And you can also create mobile applications using React Native. So these are the ways that you can get started. If you're a web developer, you can create it with npm. If you're a mobile person who wants to explore React, there's also possibilities here. So there are popular IDEs. Today we'll be talking about, we'll be coding along, or we would be using the browser IDE, Code Sandbox. And there are also other IDEs like text editors like Visual Studio, Atom, or Sublime. These requires installation, and I'm not going to be going through those installation, but there's a lot of videos out there you can watch about. But in Visual Studio, if you already have Node installed already, you can use this command. Using the CLI, you can create an app. All you have to do is go to your terminal or your command prompt, just type in npm, and npx would work only with the specific npm version. I think 5 or 6 and above. You can use npx create React app and give the app name. And by default, React uses Yarn to Yarn. But if you want to use Node modules, then you have to use you have to give this flag called as use npm. And you can also add up other CSS framework to work with React too, but you need to install it separately. So now when you create an app using the CLI or Visual Studio, this is how the folder structure looks like. It is, everything is configured, everything is set for you. The configuration is, it gives you a developer server, and then it gives you Babel or Babel, Webpack. Everything comes as, it is all packed together as a inside of this React app that we created using npx, right? The app.js is something that you need to look for, and then the dependencies are in the package.json. Note that when you look into the package.json, there are regular, if you're familiar with Node modules, and then there are ways that you can run scripts to run your app. There are a couple of things that you need to know. npm start would be for starting the app. And then there's something called as npm eject here. What exactly that command does is you need to, if you want to have a different version of Webpack, right? Then you can change it, but it's not recommended. If you know how to do it, use it, otherwise don't use it. So today we'll not be going through Visual Studio setup, but then we'll be talking about how do you create an app using Code Sandbox. So I'm gonna go here, and if you guys can see my screen, please let me know. So this is a browser IDE. It looks very similar to Visual Studio. I've already signed up. You can sign up using using your GitHub or Gmail. All you have to do is go ahead and say, click create sandbox. You can create a React project. You can create vanilla JavaScript, Vue, Angular, and so on and so forth. So this is how, this is what we'll be using for this particular workshop. And moving on to the other one. So, okay.
Just a minute, Deepa. So Amelia says, I don't think we can see your screen. I see your screen, which you're sharing the presentation. That's what you're sharing, right?
Oh, I was sharing the other one too. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah.
I was sharing this thing too. I should select. Can I select 2 of them? Or how do we do this? Option. Okay. How do you, is there a way that you can share 2 screens at a time or no?
So you should share the whole, the desktop itself.
Okay,
So
I think now, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Can you see the Code Sandbox now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. So what I was doing is I went to Code Sandbox where I said that I've already signed up. So I've already signed in with my GitHub. So all you have to do is say create sandbox, and you can create a React project or any other, like you can create Angular view as well. This is a online browser IDE. So this is very helpful when you are trying to learn learn React, and you don't need to go ahead and install all the dependencies or anything like that. It's very easy to get started if you're learning a new framework. So now, moving on to the next one. Today's session is going to be packed with a lot of core features of React. We are going to be talking about JSX, how to render elements, what is a component, what is a state, what is a prop, and what is a life cycle of a component. We'll also touch base with what are hooks, and we'll talk about only one of the methods called useState, and how do you handle events in React, and how does conditional rendering happen inside of React as well. Okay, with that said, we'll get started with JSX, which is JavaScript syntax extension. Think of it like how do you, when you write an HTML and JavaScript together, that's called, that syntactic sugar is called JavaScript JSX. So here I have a variable with a string, and then I'm using this variable inside of a HTML tag, right? So this way of writing is called JSX. This is how you need to write in React. So JSX, you can put expression, and it makes it dynamic. React DOM uses camel case. If you see in HTML attributes, you would use only class name. If you're using it, if you're using it, you use class, and you don't use it as class name in a camel case. So here in JSX, you need to use as camel case. We'll also be doing this code along where you would understand much better. So now, how does React render elements? How does it render and shows it on the UI, right? It uses something called virtual DOM. So virtual DOM, what does it do? It updates only what's necessary and when it is necessary. So how does this rendering happen? There's something called as React DOM.render method, where I'm going to show you this code sandbox so that it will help you understand. If you see this, I hope this comes up pretty faster. Give it a couple of seconds, come on. Okay, so here I want to show you that there is a HTML tag. When you create a React app, it comes with a index.html. Note that you just have only one div, which has a root ID. This is the only HTML that you would use in React. So with this root ID, what you would do is if you go to index.js, you're using this root element, right? So you're getting this ID, and then you're storing it inside this variable called root element. And this is the only thing that you would use here. And then React DOM render method sees it. And then this is, think of it like this is a gateway for your application, okay? This is how you need to create a new element in React. And without this particular element, a React render won't work. So your apps won't work. So this is something that you need to know. And moving on to the next one. So see, this is on the left is a React DOM. So imagine that you have posted, you added a comment on Facebook here, right? The React DOM basically compares this comment element and its child and its children to the previous one, and applies only the necessary DOM updates to bring the DOM to the desired state. So it'll not refresh or it'll not reload the whole page. If you don't need to work with DOM APIs, where you have to, if you work with vanilla JavaScript, you don't need to write jQuery to handle those events. Here, React does everything for you, and it just only updates this part of it. That makes it very powerful. And if I go to this code pen, you would understand much better. See here, I have a function called tick, and then I have two tags here, hello world, and then there's another tag. If I go inspect this element and this particular one, go here, inspect this. And if you look into this, note, just watch that only the time is changing, not the H1 hello world, and not even the H2 tag, which starts with it is, or the period is rendering, just the time is rendering. So this is how virtual DOM works. It does not reload the whole page. It does change only what is necessary. So that's something that a virtual DOM does. Now, let's see what is a component. So components in React has everything in React is a component. So what is it? It's a piece of reusable UI. So imagine this as a puzzle piece, okay? Every component is like a puzzle piece, and it's all isolated and independent of other puzzle pieces, right? So think of it this way. And then if you see each React project has an app component, which is the root component, right? I showed you the div with the ID of root, and then we are calling it in index.js, right? So under the root, you will have multiple components. Those are all child components forming a tree structure. So if you take, if you have a website, you have the navbar, and you have a body tag with 3 sections, and then a footer. So what React does is it goes ahead and takes these things as separate component and treats each of these components as separate. If you're thinking in terms of vanilla JavaScript, it's like having HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together as together in one piece. So this particular component will have its own HTML, CSS, JavaScript, if you're thinking in terms of vanilla JavaScript coding. Okay, so I think this visual would help you understand much better. So this is an Instagram page, and as you can see, the navbar would be a component, and then the profile part would be another component, and the stories and posts would be separate. Note that a component, you can have a component, and then inside that there can also be other components. For example, this post one, this has a like and a comment, right? This could be as a separate component, but it could also be embedded inside. So if you see these, you can put these components separately. And then when you put it together, you build complex websites like Facebook, Airbnb, and Instagram like this. So that's something that you need to understand how components work in React. This makes it very easy because if you're working as a team, each person can be they can take care of one of the components. So this way that this does not get messed up. If you are using PHP or vanilla JavaScript, what happens is people write vanilla JavaScript in different ways. So this is easier, and it's all separated out, so each person can work on their own things. So how do you create these components, right? So we're talking about components. These are puzzle pieces. How do you create those? So we can create components using class, or you can create using function. But note that inside a class, you must specify a state and a render method. So you have to make sure that when you are creating a class, understand that this has a state. And in a function, if you are creating using a function component, it's just that regular arrow functions with some HTML tags. These are stateless. So these are the differences between this. So what is a state? State is nothing but every component, every class component would have a state, and it holds the data. So these are JavaScript objects used by React, and it represents what is the current state of that component, right? It is like having a variable, normal variable. Like when you have a normal variable inside a function, after the function exits, the variable disappears, right? But in this case, state variables are preserved in React. So if you want to represent data, this is where you have to use state. Okay, so this is how you create it. You say class has a state under render method. It makes a JavaScript object. And once the JavaScript object is there, virtual DOM looks for it, and then it displays it in the real DOM. So if I show you an example, just give me a minute. Once I finish this functional component, you can see an example of this. So functional component, as we said, it's stateless. It renders only on the UI, and it can be used along with arrow functions or regular functions. So here is another example. I made a comparison of functional and the class components. If this loads, hopefully, I think I have it here. So I have gone ahead and created a folder called components. And inside that, I have a class component and a functional component. Inside that class component, you're creating a regular class like how you create in JavaScript, but it extends a React component. Here, you're using this keyword and you're setting the state to 0, right? And when you're using a class and when you're using this keyword, you need to use bind method so that it represents the current object and not the window object. And we are going ahead and increasing this counter to incrementing it with 1. And then we are using onClick method here to, if I go ahead and click this, it's going to change the state, right? So this is how class component works. However, you see this is pretty lengthy. One, it's got a lot of this keyword. So this was used until 2019, and then you will see the code which was written during those times. You would see a lot of class components, but then these days people use functional components. So this is a new concept that React came up with, something called as hooks. So here you use something called as useState. With this, as you can see, this code is pretty neat. One, it's very concise, and let's run this one as well. It does the same thing. If I go ahead, oops, sorry. And let me go ahead and comment these. So one good thing about this browser-based is it immediately refreshes. So if I go ahead, it does the same thing. The useState, let's refresh this page to set it to 0. So the useState has a state, it starts with, we set the parameter to 0, and then it increments here. So it is the same thing as a class component, but this is much more easier. But this is one of the, we'll be talking about this useState when we talk about hooks, okay? Now, this is how you create a class and functions, function component inside React. So we talked about class and functions. These are the main things that you need to know. Class has a state, it gets the data, and then renders and updates the DOM. Whereas in functional component, where we don't use those hooks, it doesn't have a state, it just displays the UI. So moving on to props. What are props? Props are nothing but properties in React. These are arguments that you pass inside of a component via a HTML attribute. These are immutable and they are read-only, and it's set by parent component. So if you look into this code, there are a couple of pieces. Imagine that this is a separate page, separate file as greet.jsx, and this is your index.js. What it does. So you see this, the render method is called with that element, which is greet, and we are giving a parameter here as Deepa. So what does greet do? React calls greet component with the name as property. And then greet returns the h1 tag. And as a result, the DOM is getting updated with hello Deepa. This is how props work in React. So props are nothing but properties which you pass inside of a component here, like this greet one. Oops, sorry. Come on. Sorry about that, I accidentally clicked. Okay, so far we talked about JSX, rendering elements, components, props, state. So now let's go ahead and see what is a life cycle of a component. There are four stages. So you have initialization, mounting, updating, and unmounting. So if you see these green ones that are here, these are from React DOM method, but the other ones are from React methods. So for initialization, you set the props and you set the initial state of the component inside the constructor, like I showed you how in the class component. You set that, and then you will call one of these methods for mounting, and then you can also use update. And once you're done, you can unmount it as well. So I have a code sandbox here. So note that in the console, if this thing loads up, come on. Okay. So when this page loaded up, it says that we are using a class, and then we are initializing it with the state of hello world. And we are using this method called as for mounting, we are using mount, a component did mount. And when the page loaded, you see this component did mount, right? If I click on this press here, what it would do is it would change the state and become hello WWCode. And then it'll go ahead and display these two. So good. Let's see how it works. So once I pressed the button here, it did show us that component. We are seeing these methods are being called, right? This is how the life cycle of a component works. Now, let's move on to hooks. Hooks got introduced in 2019. This is very recent feature of React. So earlier, before version 15, we had something called as functional component, which was stateless. So what does hooks did? Hooks helps us to add a state to a functional component using some methods here. One of the methods is useState. There are also other methods that are available with this API, but we are going to be seeing only useState here. So like I showed you in the previous one, we are using useState, and you see inside this counter component, we have declared two variables, count and set. And then we also have a useState hook. So this one is initialized with 0. And then what happens is when we click on a button, the counter method, the count is gets updated, and we are using a variable which is a function which calls itself here. So this is how hooks work in React. So how do we handle events in React? Events are it uses camel case, right? See, if you see this on click button in React, we use camel case rather than a lowercase in HTML. And you pass on the event handler here like this in JSX, but in HTML, you pass it as a string. And one of the other ones is like in another difference that you can see is in HTML, you can return false, but in React, you cannot prevent default behavior. You must specifically say prevent default explicitly, because this is a synthetic event, and it's also defined according to the spec of W3 spec by React. So you don't need to worry about cross compatibility. This is something that you need to remember when you're handling events. So I have, okay, come on. Okay, so I have a button here, which I have set the state to toggle false, right? So that's why it's showing as click off. And then how do I handle? Whenever I click on this, it changes its state here. So if you see here, it handles, it looks for this handle click method, and it says, okay, what is this previous state? And based on that, it displays. So it handles these events. If I go ahead and say, okay, set this button state to true, right? If I do that, then you see that it's showing as click on. So this is how events are handled in React. And moving on to conditional rendering, which is very similar to the previous example that I showed, but here we are using a couple of, we are using a conditional statement and a couple of methods to show it as how it's going to show. So here I have a user greeting method. It says welcome back if a user is a logged in user, right? If a user is a logged in user, it uses user greeting, which is welcome back. Otherwise, it returns guest user, which says please sign up. So if I go ahead and say, okay, is this user logged in user? It was not earlier. So if I set it up as true, it's going to say welcome back. This is how conditional rendering happens inside of React. And with that, let's go ahead and code along. Princia, can you please go ahead and share the code along?
Yes, ma'am, doing it.
Thank you. Okay, before we get started, I just wanted to thank you. We are going to be creating a very small application, like with components. This is a contact list. And then if you go ahead and open up the code along link that Princia posted, you see here on the, hang on, if this thing loads up, come on. So I have gone ahead and made some changes in this HTML tag, HTML file. I removed all the comments. And then I added some styling. Please go ahead and see the styling is there already added to this app. And then I also added a script tag for index.js. I also created a component folder with these files, avatar, card, and detail. So note that the code extension is JSX here because it's a React project. We are using JSX, but you could also use JS, but I see a lot having as JSX. So I changed the extension too. So, and I also moved, if you create a new project, you would see the app.js outside, but I also moved that inside of this component. So now let's go ahead and start coding on this part. So in this app.js, we would create a function. I'm going to be creating the arrow function. And inside this app, what are we returning? We are returning, if you want to, I wish I had put that screenshot of this. So we are returning some div here. So first we are returning a h1 tag. But first, let's create a div. So, and this one thing is I might miss out a div or closing tag because I'm so used to Visual Code, which has auto. If I am a little slower on that, please. I have a lot of shortcuts with Visual Studio, but here I have to type it along. Heading, then I have my contacts, and then I'm going to be closing this tag as well. So if you go ahead and see inside the styling, I have this class name of heading. So this is what we will be using. And inside this, we are going to call this card component, which would contain, before I started, I'm sorry, I forgot to say this. I've created a dummy data here. Ideally, you will get these data from the database. I created dummy data, and this data has contacts with name, image URL, email, phone number, etc. So we'll be using those in here, card name equals contacts And then because it's an object, we pass it on like this. And then dot name. And then we have, what else? We have image, contacts, the contacts. Oh yeah, I need to get contacts. So image URL. And then we had telephone number, which is contacts. That phone, I think, yes. And then the last one we have email, because contacts dot email. Right? So I have this now. Note that I have to close this. Imagine these are our own email, HTML tags that we are creating. So I have a card, a component that I'm using it inside of this app, and then we have to export this, right? Export default app, right? So we have this now. We still haven't gotten it, but we are getting there. So now let's move on to avatar. Okay, what is that in avatar we have? We have the image, right? So avatar is the image. So let's go ahead and create another function called avatar. I'm going to create it as a, okay, let me create it as a function here. And here, what are we returning? We are returning a image. So image with a class name. Let's see, what did we have here? I think it's the circle image. So we have it as circle image, I think. Then we have the source. Here we are calling this property with blocks.img, and then let's also add an alt tag if it is not present. We'll say, okay, avatar underscore image. Okay, then we close this image tab. Got it. Okay, now let's export this. Export default avatar. All right, so we have this. Now we'll move on to detail card. We will come back to this, this card in a moment. So we'll just add detail inside this detail component. Let's go ahead and add the function here. In this function, I'm going to be using a regular function, function details. And note that every component that I am naming, I'm using capital letters. That's something that React expects you to have it as well. And here in the detail card, we have this detail info, which are these two. So, and add return. We're returning, what are we returning here? We're just returning a p tag. So class name of info, detail info. Let me see, what did I add here? Info, sorry. Info, and then I have to set the props dot detail info. It'll all make sense once we see this. Sorry, this is p tag. Okay, now this is done. Let's export this as well. Export default details, right? So now let's move on to card, right? So in this, we are going to put everything together. So we will have a function, let's say function card, and then we'll pass on the props here as well. And then this would have a lot of stuff in here. Let's return return, what are we returning? We're returning the entire part. So div, let me go ahead and close this div right here, or else I'll forget. Because this is not the IDE that I usually use. Class name, and then you have part, and inside this, at the top, you're having the name. So first we need to create another div with a class name equals top, and then which would contain, let's also add this, close this div here as I forget, which would have the h2 with a class name of name, yeah, yes, name, and then I go ahead and drops that name. I can spell name to the family closes h2 tab. And then we also had this avatar here. So note that I'm going to be calling this avatar component inside here. Avatar, and then you're having this image. So image, that's props.img, right? And then we need to close this. So yeah, this is the first part of our top, like at the top. And then we need to create another, or you can also auto format it using like this. Then you have another div with a class name of bottom, which has this detail info. And yeah, bottom, here you would have this detail component with detail info. Equals, I think that's what we do. Props dot, here we had, what are the things that we had? Telephone and the email. Detail info, using the props here. That email, cool. And this should work. Oh no, if I see, I forgot to close the div. This is what happens when you are not used to this. Okay, now let's go ahead and export default part. Now let's see if it works. Okay, so there we have. So we have created successfully one part here, but we can also go ahead and create more if we want. Ideally, you can get this data from the database, and you can do this. And you can also, I don't need to create, like here, if I go ahead and paste the same thing, right? Let me go ahead and auto format it. You go ahead, it shows 3 parts here, right? So you can use a for loop, and then ideally you will get the data from the backend, and you would use a for loop. This is one, and I just want to give a small demo here like this. So hope this helps. And with that, we have completed our code along. And I just wanted to recap the whole thing that we learned today. So we learned about JSX. What is JSX? It's a JavaScript syntax extension, which is nothing but writing HTML inside of a JS file. How does rendering happen in React using React DOM.render method? What is a component? It's a piece of reusable, a piece of UI. Think of it as a puzzle piece. Each puzzle piece put together makes a page. So it can get complex. Remember, the more the puzzle pieces are, the complex your websites would be, right? And inside if you're writing a class component or even a functional component using hooks, they have a state holds the data, and it renders the JavaScript object. So properties, props are properties that you pass inside a component, and component has a life cycle. there are 4 stages, 4 parts to it: in initialization, mounting, updating, and unmounting. We also learned about how does functional component works along with hooks use state method. And then finally, we talked about how to handle events and how conditional rendering works in React. So what would be your next step? So you can go ahead, you can advance your React knowledge. From here, you can start learning hooks. There are other methods in hooks such as use effect, use contact, and there are a lot more methods in hooks API that you can explore. And you can also learn how to do form validation, what are fragments, and you can also go ahead and see how you can work with the routing part and how does it work with, you can also explore how to use React as a full stack with backend part with Express. And you can also explore how to create mobile apps using this, right? So this is a basic thing that I've just skimmed through within a short amount of time. With the knowledge that you have, you can also try this. I can pass this. You can with the knowledge that you have gained, you can create this app too. So you can go ahead and create a notes app with the title and say, okay, I can add notes, and then you can add with the event. You can also say that you can create, and then you can delete it too. So this is something that you can do it with what you have learned today. And what else? That said, thank you so much for your time. And these are the ways you can connect with me. And here are my references. So yeah.
Cool. So awesome, Deepa. Thank you for doing it. We have a question from Roxanne. So she asks, so is the card a parent component?
Actually, no, it's this thing is a parent, the whole card. Hang on, let me go ahead and show this thing. How do I get past this thing? Oh no, hang on, sorry about that. Let me here, or let me move this thing. How did we do this? Okay, which one is she talking about? This one? No, actually we are, this is this one is a parent method. If you see this whole thing is a parent one, right? With that, we have child elements like top, we have it inside the top, you have the name, right? But then this card as a whole, if you're having, example, this is something that, if you have an element inside of it where it's just clickable, like how I showed it in the notes one, this would be a child component of this card. But here we didn't do that. We're just creating a card. We are just displaying the UI. We are not adding any functionality to this. Does that make sense? Oh, somebody is asking.
Yeah, there's another question in the Q&A. Could you go over what is prevent default?
Oh, sure. Okay, hang on. Let's see. Let me go to this slide here. Just give me 1 minute. I'm trying to get this up. Where did we talk about this? Here? Yes. Okay. So prevent default method is something that you need to use. For example, if you have a form, right, and you can prevent submitting the form without any details. It shouldn't be allowing you to submit the form without the details, right? So to prevent that, you use something called as prevent default. But in HTML, you don't need to use that. This is one of the examples that I can give you as if you want to prevent an event, and you can use this method to stop that default action. Does that make clear?
Is the recording, yeah, so recording available for future? Yes, well, I'll share the recording in Slack once it's there.
And if you also want this code, like whatever examples that I showed, I can share this slides as well, Princia, if anybody wants.
Yes, yes. I'll take the slides from you, and I'll share the slides and the recording together on Slack. Yeah. Anyone else? Anything?
I know this is something that I kind of quickly went through. So if you know, this is a lot of concept to pack it in a very short 1 hour thing. And I also wanted to show something in the code along as well. So I hope this helps.
Yes, I think, yeah, this was really good. Like, especially the code along was good. I think, yeah, everyone really appreciated that. So the nice feedback here. Yeah, so thank you again, Deepa, for presenting. This was really a great session. And yeah, to everyone, yeah, join us on Slack and we can discuss more if you want, like to create study groups around this. And yeah, like earlier I pasted the Slack, the GitHub repository link, and which we worked on Hacktoberfest, October this month. Yeah, and that's React too. So yeah, happy to do more things on a closed cohort basis if y'all are interested. But otherwise, yeah, this was really good. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, enjoy the upcoming holidays and see you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Princia. Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me here and giving me a chance to speak. And for those who are attending, I also want to have, I want to say one thing. I have an event coming up with Google Developer Group San Jose, and it's with React and how to create mobile apps for IoT. And it's with React. So you can join us on the 20th. And I can also post that link in Slack. Thank you guys, and happy holidays, and have a wonderful new year.
Yes. See y'all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.